Hello and welcome to the Nonsense Chronicles. This is Doug Sashery, and as always, I'm joined by, and to my left,
Rob Mendiola.
Hey Rob, how you doing today, buddy?
Pretty good, man. I've got these new headphones on that you bought.
Well, I see the
Rode.
boxes here, so you
How do you pronounce it? Rodecaster or Rode?
Rode. I
Rode.
think it's Rode.
I think it's Rode. Yeah,
but it's
the
yeah.
Rode headphones.
but the
they're
people
pretty
that
smooth.
but the people that I know that are always out to get them is usually the roadies. So
The Roadies. Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, we don't have Roadies here.
no, we don't. It's just me and you doing
Yep.
all the toting, all the toting.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that was. I remember when I bought my first hard case for my guitar, my first very heavy case, because I knew it'd be moving around and went through a little bit. Because I always had a softer case,
Yeah.
and I remember when I had my first one, and I remember locking it up and putting it in there and saying, "Huh," because I had as not a roadie by night, had loaded
Yeah.
plenty of equipment.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I actually put my own guitar in the case.
Yeah.
That's a first. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I usually keep. I know you've seen this one out for a while.
oh yeah, yeah.
Not Paul Reed Smith, but I typically keep all my guitars in cases.
Yeah, because if you don't, you get a little dust.
Yeah, I got two back there. Well, the strings oxidized too, because it's just the outside.
Yeah.
Air will oxidize them.
And you're even more particular than I am on that. So,
Oh man, yeah.
I know.
But first off, I hate changing strings. So, and my strings are coated, so they last longer anyway.
Well, I don't want Mike Ned telling me it's going to be 6 weeks before he can fix my stuff.
Yeah,
I got a full schedule already, Doug. Yeah, he does. But you've been busy lately. That's
man, yeah, works crazy.
That's good. In fact,
good.
we're putting this podcast out late a couple of days because we both have a lot on our plate
Hectic
right now.
schedules.
Yeah, but because we're waiting on we've got a couple people that we're going to talk to that have some releases coming out, which we're kind of holding off on before we release them and talk to them ourselves. So we have a couple episodes that we're going to do with just us just shooting around, but I think both of them are kind of informative. But today we're talking about something that Rob is like running out of the room right now as we speak. It's all pitter pattering. No, it's we promised, that was our promise, that we would never talk about politics or religion on this show, and we're going to
Race.
yeah, well, we're not going to. Yeah,
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
Terrible combo.
yeah. We just don't. Yeah, just be you, whatever that is, and be good. Don't be bad to anybody else.
Yeah,
But we can get around that by talking. I told
you
him.
found a loophole, Doug.
That's right.
Did you?
I did find a loophole. There's always a good loophole, and this is it's to talk about elections. It's election time, and it's very important. I am very much a history nerd and civics and all that, and I think it's important. Important to talk about. And now, granted, I honestly believe in today's day and age, when I hear people talking, and it's hard to be in the middle, man. You sit in the middle on anything, you get kicked in the balls more than you could possibly imagine. But I personally believe there's good in most people. I don't care what little letter you put in front of you. It doesn't matter to me. There's good in something, and there's a little bit is right. Nobody is ever 100% right, and nobody's ever 100% wrong. It doesn't work that way, Some things, just most things what can you stand for? But anyhow, we're here to talk about today.
Some people think they're right though all the time.
All the damn time, man. And this is what the conversation is talking about. Elections. We got election coming up, and by the time this episode will be rolling through election day, actually. And elections are important because a lot of people, don't get elections. These people that
Colonized.
Yeah, boy, I messed that word
Colonized.
up.
Yeah, it's colonized.
Yeah, colonized before they had that test. But they they came over here they wanted the freedom of self-government. They wanted the freedom of religion. they didn't want to be told, and eventually they lived over here as subjects of Great Britain, and there were several countries, but we had indigenous people here. But when the British sent people over here, they were colonized. Hey, you send everything back to King George, and all this. You trade, you're sending stuff back, and people coming over here. But eventually, those people got tired of not having a say. In other words, King George didn't like something. Well, hey, I'm going to put a big old tax on your tea. I'll sell all that tea over there. Before you can ship it out of Boston Harbor, I'm going to put a big old tax that you're going to have to pay on it. In other words, nobody will want to buy it at the price you're going to put it at because you're going to tax out. It's just like tariffs or anything else. Well, the colonists got tired of that, and they called it taxation without representation. In other words, they were not getting any vote on how they were governed, on how they lived their lives. And that's why voting is important, and that's why our founding fathers said, hey, enough is enough. Let's form our own government. At first it was representatives. They had conclaves in different parts of the country. It was 13 states what they founded originally, but it was a lot of the Northeast, and they traveled by horse to these meetings, like in Philadelphia, and eventually, let's form our own government. So they fought the war, all that, and then the first elections were held in 1788 to 1789. So they wasn't like instant results on, and they didn't have a big board up, ruling at night, so people had to get these results in, by horse or whatever. And God, you can only imagine the conspiracy theories if social media had been around then. Jesus Christ, man. Could you imagine so-and-so rode his horse and I saw him pull into a barn before he, what's going on in that barn? No,
yeah, that's telling what kind of stuff's going on back then.
Just think of the insanity. That social media it's good, done a lot of good, but boy, it's done some more. But but they had that's how the first elections were done, and they selected George Washington as his president, and also in consideration was John Adams, which he came in second. So if you came in second back then, well, you get to be vice president, So, and mainly what they were running for at that time was who was mainly for a centralized government and who wasn't for it. People like John Monroe, which was our, I think, fifth president, he wasn't for a centralized government, so he eventually became president, and that's how this was done originally. And I think that kind of stuff is really important, and if people in the Soviet Union, it's Russia now, but in the Soviet Union, when it was hardcore Soviet Union, there was one party, and you basically, if you voted for somebody else, it basically meant your ballot was invalid. In other words, it was like if there was a extra Chad poked out, they considered every ballot that wasn't for Brezhnev or whatever to be invalid. So you basically had no choice. And trust me, if you voted for somebody else, well, yeah, the party captain on your block you'd be being watched, and you'd probably end up at a gulag somewhere or working somewhere which you didn't like, so you had no choice whatsoever.
That's communism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but it's totalitarianism, also, and it's like Nazi Germany. Hitler got in power. When he first came to power, I think they had tried and tried. And eventually when they got in, they got enough, the chancellor, or the president, Hindenburg, appointed him chancellor. It was kind of like a coalition thing that appeased some people. They thought they would just make it, that was going to be easy and they'd be rid of him as a problem. Well, no, they controlled like 30-something% of the government. Then they secretly burnt down their Congress. It was called the Reichstag. They burned it down and they blamed it on the communists. And within, I can't remember how soon it was, within months or whatever, Hitler had declared, it was well, I think you had to wait. I think he had to actually wait until Hindenburg died, and he wasn't too far for this world when Hitler got in there. But once he did, he declared it, almost like state of martial law, where in other words, just one party. That's it. You couldn't have any other parties. There were no other votes.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Do you want that system where there's only one party? I mean, look, I can admit to voting straight party before. I'm glad that it's not an option now. I'm glad. I know some people complain about that, but no, trust me. I'm glad it's not an option. It makes you think a little bit, even though you get in the ballot and there's like, I have no clue whatsoever. Now, I try and get the tax stuff, like what's going to cost me money.
Right.
Was it good or bad idea?
No.
No. And
more school taxes? No.
No.
More property taxes? No.
No. But if you have just one party, man, things get out of control real quick. One party says, in the case of the Nazis, well, this book is not good anymore. Let's burn this book. Anybody, you can't listen. We burn this kind of music. They threw books on the fire, dude. Just literature. Any thought.
Now they let anything in the schools and libraries.
Now, if of course you listen to anything, that's the one thing that. No, I'm not going to even go into that. Yeah, I'm not going to step into that mud.
Well, you've gone from one extreme to the other, and it's like, which one's right?
Yeah. Well, so. I would just say go and study the people that are running and see what you can tolerate more of, which one, because and stay away from what you hear on CNN and all those people that are there is just to boil your blood.
It's hard to get facts though these days.
It is very hard to get facts
because you have the media running elections now. It seems like, they're way too involved and they're too biased in what they believe and what they want to push.
They do have some sites out there, and I couldn't tell you some of them. I've looked them up before on just look up any candidate on the issues and or their platform. Look so and so platform.
I mean, I think you'd really have to try hard to find real facts,
Yeah, but you can find out how people have voted before, what their trend is, what their past is. And that'll give you a good idea on what path they're going to stay on, And
but the thing is, like, who's influencing these ideas, these choices that people are making?
Mm-hmm.
That's the scary thing, is there's so many outsiders that are influencing people to think they want them to think, they're making them think they want what they want them to think.
Well, bringing it back to our initial conversation, the founding fathers, that's the one thing they did not want was factions. Believe it or not, if you can look that up, they did not want factions in government, which we ended up there, and they ended up doing it themselves. But whether it was Whigs or they had different names of parties, but they did not want factions, and like I said, it started basically almost as factions, to where some were pro-centralized government and some weren't. But they didn't want the party system that we have now, and that's where we're at now. And that's why I would.
And the parties have kind of changed too, from what they were.
Oh yeah,
were originally.
Yeah, I agree. They certainly have.
Yeah.
And but like I said, voting is a freedom that we're given in this country. That we talk about this party or that party, and these vets. No, all of those vets that fought for our freedoms fought for it in the fact that you could vote however you wanted to vote. So go out and exercise your vote to vote for whoever you want. And I tell you what, I will never, ever judge or make friends on how they vote. I will never do that. Or for somebody having a difference of opinion than me, it will never. It will never.
It does make me confused. Like sometimes when I hear people's opinions and you're like, how did you come to that?
Oh, dude, let me tell you,
it's really scary.
Yeah, no, life. I mean, we joked about this before,
but I blame the media personally.
Oh yeah, well,
I totally blame the media.
That social media. You know, like if you have parents that are older, man, and they see stuff, you know, because their social media wasn't around when we were kids, but you know, they see something online and well, it must be true. You know, it must be Walter Cronkite telling me.
Well, yeah, because you can go from one news, let's say Fox News. You can go read Fox News, and you'll get one side. You know, you'll see all the kind of comments and the articles there, and then you go to like Yahoo or something, you know, and you'll see like the whole flip side, right?
Yeah, you'll see completely different. You know,
and each one's bashing the other, and it's like,
yeah, that's what
it's ridiculous.
It's opinion, you know, and I don't want opinion. I want bottom line fact. Give me the bottom line.
Yeah.
What's your track record? You know, and but I
think that's where people need to pay attention more to how the economy is, and you know how hard it is, or how much inflation's going up. You know,
yeah,
your groceries, your gas.
What works for you? You know, what honestly works for you. But you know, I will never judge a friendship on someone else's beliefs.
No, I mean that's your freedom, right?
Yeah, and life would be boring, man, if we were all exactly the same, man. That is a boring life, man.
Yeah,
and you know, I
don't think we're ever going to get away from like people thinking that you're wrong. You were wrong for taking that side. You know. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get away from that.
And I think that's okay. I think that's healthy. Like, you know, like
unless we.
I mean, you had conversations
turn
earlier.
into a civil war or something.
I mean, you had conversation earlier about something, and I have a little different of opinion on it. But I don't think that if I text you later on tonight, it's like, man, Rob's ghosted me. I already God, that didn't take long, you know. No, you know, it's not like that. I mean, I like I said, you know, there's some opinions where I'll like, wow, you know, it's different than mine. But you know, I'm glad I'm willing to listen to that.
Yeah,
maybe if I hear 4 or 5 others like that and want to truly why somebody believes, well, maybe I'll bend a little bit more to that. But it just depends, you know. I have my beliefs that are ingrained in me from life, just like most of us do, you know. And
yeah, if you were born in Afghanistan, you'd be completely different as far as your ideologies.
Yeah,
you would think something completely different.
Yeah, because there's other stuff that had been.
I've tried to tell people that before, like that were very like strong on what they believed in. I was like, if you were born across the ocean this way, you'd believe one thing. Across the ocean that way, you'd believe a whole other thing.
Yeah.
You'd still be a human. You'd still be the same person, but you'd believe what you were taught there.
Yeah.
And most of us are taught certain ways here.
That's right.
You know.
I judge, you know, like I said, for me on voting and stuff like that, it's just what's in the real, what affects me personally.
Well, I mean, talking about, you know, what's people are being taught. I mean, look at the colleges, what kind of shape they're in lately, you know, with all the stuff they're teaching now, you know, in colleges.
Oh, it's a lot different. But I mean,
it's a lot different.
Yeah. But like I said.
Then even 20 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah. But
it's completely different.
Like I said, you know.
But that's your whole new generation is going to be completely different from.
They're going to be completely
from what we believed in.
I think that's the reason why I believe that no wonder people don't live that long, because you really get to a certain age, you're like, oh, I'm out.
Yeah, it's like, I don't want to do this anymore.
I'm out, man. Yeah. But no,
and you're okay with it. You're like, you're okay with that.
Yeah, I just, you know, I think that teaching in the high school and stuff like that.
And they only teach you what they want you to know.
Oh, so much to the test, man. Yeah, I mean, it's so much to teaching to stand a test so we can.
And then you grow
keep
up
our
and
jobs,
and you learn all these other facts that you're like, where was this in school? You know?
Yeah,
like I didn't hear any of this. You know?
Well, I think basic life skills. You know, learning that people are different, or you know, people are going to have different philosophies. Learning that stuff is important, man. And, you know, some of it is taught to us, but
very little.
Yeah, very little. And then you get out and you have to cope with it in real life, you know, and I think that's where people have a hard time.
Finding all the truths and then figuring out which one is actual truth or not.
Yeah.
That's what's hard.
That's right. You know, it's Robert Evans, I think one of his quotes was, there's three sides to every story. There's your truth, my truth, and the real truth, and nobody's lying. It's so it's how we all see. Like you said, you see things differently. But I'm suggesting that just everybody go out and vote, and leave it there. Leave it at the election box, man. Don't. There's no big conspiracies on who's won or who's lost. When it's over, it's over.
But when it's over, people are going to be angry.
Yeah,
you think about it. Think about it. Half the country's going to be really angry, pissed.
You know what? I think sports taught me a good lesson. That if you do something and you don't succeed in it, guess what? You go back and you prepare yourself to do better next time. What can I do better? And we get a lot in this country of throwing up the same stuff again and again and again. If you don't win, learn to accept it and learn to move on and forward and change what you're doing. I need to do something different. If I'm doing the same thing every time, well, it's not working. Do something different.
This year's going to be interesting to see how people respond to the election results.
Yeah. I don't even. Yeah. Boy, I used to watch. I don't even want to know. Tell me in the morning when okay, or tell me like 6 weeks after that.
And then it's like, well, what do you do? Right? You're just going to go do what you're going to do anyways.
I joked about that. I joked about that the other day. I went and met my daughter at the polling place. I early voted the first day we could early vote, and then boy, they were lines.
Really?
They were lines. The first day were lines when she went.
I went yesterday, and I was like in and out.
Yeah,
5 minutes.
I honestly believe that there should be no excuse for somebody saying you couldn't. Look, there's plenty of time. They're giving us weeks in advance to go. You can, and I think that's a great thing. But you should be able. But yeah, look, I told somebody, I said, they were handing out stuff, and I just ignore them. That people are working for different campaigns, and I said, no, I already voted. I'm just voting again. Yeah, I want to load up the ballot box.
You're trying to get arrested.
Yeah, that's right. But no, yeah, that's it. I just basically wanted to say, go vote.
Go vote. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and respect.
As an American, you should vote.
Yeah, respect other people's right to vote. Everybody has a right to vote, and whoever want. None of these big parties that I think the president used to get paid. It was $250,000 or $500,000.
I think they still do.
Yeah. Well, guess how many billions of dollars that are being pumped in a campaign. Yeah, none of them will remember your name or anything like that. So don't cry over that. And guess what? If there's something you don't like, I can almost guarantee you that in 4 years you'll have a chance to change it again. That's how it works. That's how the system works. It'll never be 100% the way you want it. It will never be that way. It's always going to be partial. Yay, this, and we'll boo that. But okay.
I think people just want it better, though.
Yeah, and I think we gradually get there.
Yeah,
but
it needs to get better.
But it's this system of voting. It's a pull and a pullback, and it's a good thing, because if we didn't have it, we would be in the scenarios I talked about before, like Soviet Union or Nazi Germany. That is why we have the voting system. It's good to have the pull back and forth in a conversation. And we don't have to be at each other's throats. We can strongly deny, be against what somebody else is espouting, which we plan to run a little piece of audio.
I think we have so many different cultures now in America that we're kind of at a culture war a little bit. I think,
But we can't go, like I said, I don't think we should go to civil war every time that we have I don't like the way that's done. Pop, pop, pop. No, you go and you vote. That's why we hear you vote, I
don't know that we'll ever have a civil war again.
I hope not.
But
yeah,
culturally, people are really disagreeing with each other right now.
Well, they've had that before in like in the late 60s. And, it just.
I think we're kind of back to that pretty heavy right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope it gets better.
Yeah. Well, we're going to run a clip at the beginning of this, which you heard. It's a clip that I really appreciate, and I think it speaks very much on voting and freedoms, and the freedoms that were given to us, very hard earned by people that lived long, long ago. And it's America, It's like I said, it's the right for somebody that's right next to you to believe exactly what you've whole life you've believed just the opposite. They have that right, you know? Yeah.
It's a melting pot.
It is. And that's life. And just go vote and take care. This is the Nonsense Chronicles, and we'll be back.
Later.